The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered has restored my will to live a bit. Now, I'm not a fool. I know the fact that we have an Oblivion Remaster now in 2025 suggests the Elder Scrolls 6 is still a considerable length of time away, but considering the abundance of rumours and credible leaks regarding this game, I'm just finally glad that it's here. I mean, I have to admit I was skeptical, because in a modern environment you just never know how far people are going to go to fake things, considering they have all the tools at their disposal to do it, and there are plenty of people out there who don't appear to have a social life. But you know what, it's here now. They announced it on the 22nd of April 2025, and shadow dropped it on the same day, which is, I mean, is it really a shadow drop if people knew about it for months in advance, almost like that was the marketing campaign? No matter, it was officially announced yesterday and officially released yesterday, which is refreshing, even if my logic still struggles to compute it. Nonetheless, it's nice to not have an announcement and then several months to build up expectations only for the game to be a bit entirely different, or as is typically the case with remasters, not different enough to justify spending months trying to sell me a game that I already own. And perhaps there's an argument to be made that Oblivion's cultural significance within the gaming world gave it a unique position on this, that for most titles, even most remakes of beloved games, is just not attainable. But there's something to be said for the approach of, here's the game, you know what it is, go and have fun. And that at surface level is the approach employed by Bethesda in their absence of a marketing campaign for the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered. And while it's far from something that I'd expect to get used to, it sure did make me more than anything excited to dive back in to Cyrodiil. On the flip side, it made waiting for the game to install a slow, painstaking and agonising ordeal that I felt every second of, with a brief respite of macaroni cheese somewhere in the middle. But once it was installed, I made my character, John Fungus, and embarked on a familiar adventure to see what had changed. And I'm only so many hours in, and I can tell you straight up that yes, you can see many differences visually, you can hear many differences audibly, but fundamentally, and this is important, the game is still Oblivion. Though exponentially updated, the faces still have that whimsical quality about them, and of course those unfathomable gormless expressions carry over just fine. Furthermore, the game may very well have a nice polished Unreal Engine 5 finish now, but you still get your classic Bethesda Game Studios bugs. For instance, Joffrey's aggressive tan line. Classic voices return, and it appears there are new voices in this game as well, to further flesh out the world and make it not feel like it's just the same 5 people on repeat, but that does not stop NPC to NPC dialogue from being a nonsense exchange at the best of times.
How are you?
Okay. You?
I've been better.
Ever spent a night in the Tiber Septum?
If you're looking for luxury, there's no better place to stay.
So long.
Bye.
And of course, despite the gameplay tweaks, jumping and spamming restoration is still a valid leveling up strategy. So what we've actually got here is an incredibly updated version of Oblivion that does retain some of the unintended things that made Oblivion so iconic. My shadow appears to suggest I have assumed the form of the letter I. For clarity, this is not a remake, it's a remaster. Somewhere under these updated visuals, these enhanced gameplay elements, these improvements to audio, lighting, and virtually all of the above, sits the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion you either know and love, or are about to know and love, if these are the types of games that you enjoy. Sure, perhaps more could have been done to make it more immersive, maybe cut out the loading screens when entering interiors or indeed entering cities. Being confronted with a loading screen every 5 minutes, if not less, may not be the most immersive thing in the world, especially on the modern market. But you know what, so far, I've been very satisfied with what Oblivion Remastered has offered. Nevertheless, there are some pros and there are some cons, so if you'd indulge me, allow me to talk you through those. So let's begin with the positives. Visually, the game has been upgraded beyond belief. I think it's fair to say the visuals of 2006's Oblivion have certainly aged somewhat. Now, there is an art style in that, and technical limitations are typically where those are born. So yes, you can remaster and remake, but you have to recapture the magic of the art style. And that can be especially challenging if you're not operating within the same parameters, and 2 decades of the advancement of game development technology would certainly suggest that that is absolutely the case here. Or at least, if all things go well, it should be. You can use Oblivion as a baseline, but ultimately you do have to modernise its aesthetic. How do you both accomplish that and remain faithful to the original version of the game? You could completely forsake the art style and go for a hyper-realistic approach because the technology is there now, but will that sit well with how the rest of the game is? And I mean, ideally you want to recapture the essence of Oblivion, otherwise you'll alienate those who loved the original version. I personally believe the remaster does a reasonably good job at this. I wouldn't necessarily say the visuals have been made realistic, they've just been made better using the baseline of the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion's DNA. There's greater detail, better lighting, and by that I mean lighting. The faces have been enhanced to no longer look so silly, but without not looking silly, if you know what I mean, and you give the colours a nice clean modern potency, while keeping that essential high fantasy finish. This creates something aesthetically pleasant, but it doesn't necessarily look modern, nor is it necessarily trying to. It's not necessarily looking realistic, because that's not its aim either. Its aim is to look like enhanced visuals, for a game that people know and love. And when you do that properly, you generate a sense of familiarity that makes you feel as if this is how the game looked when you first played it. And while the veil isn't that thin for Oblivion in particular, that rejuvenating element is still present. It doesn't feel alien, nor does it feel like a ground-up remake. It might look leagues ahead of what Oblivion looked like, technically speaking, but the glory of its aesthetic still feels firmly rooted in the Oblivion of old, and that to me is a good thing. If I were to recommend improvements, I'd argue the greenery could do with being a tad more saturated, and there are certainly some overcorrections in there, such as every now and then you might come across a character who appears to possess a face of endless detail, and of course the odd Khajiit looks a bit funny. But you know what, on the whole that doesn't actually hurt the aesthetic of Oblivion, considering it's perhaps one of the most unintentionally funny games of all time. It would frankly be odd if you didn't have this staring at you every so often. And you know what, the faces across the board, though graphically they have improved, they still remain true to being a bit silly. Now the updated visuals and textures are one thing, certainly something worthy of merit, but another thing that's quite easy to overlook perhaps is the lighting itself. It's quite typical of remasters to overindulge in lens flares and god rays and call it a day, maybe give everything an irritating orange hue, but here the lighting looks really nice, really cozy. It creates the atmosphere you'd want for an immersive gaming experience. There's a nice volume to the world space, and I like the overall clean but not clinical look it presents. I can't say I have the technical expertise to go into more depth on this point, I just kind of like it. Another thing I'm glad was retained was the paper finish of the menus. That glorious paper map is excellent, and while they've certainly tweaked the finish of these pages, most things function exactly the same. But I do like that they've not gone for some block colour clinical HUD and menu, because that would be really soulless. And I'd make a case for that being a nitpick I'd take with the actual title. I mean, God forbid we have interesting typography in these trying times, but in the actual gameplay I can't really fault it. It's another essence of Oblivion's identity retained. I like that that compass at the top of the screen isn't a generic white bar with north, east, south and west marked on it, and a variety of locations. Do I think it perhaps gives us too much information? Yes. I don't think I need to know an undiscovered location's name until I'm there, but it has a style overall, it has a soul. And for a remaster of an almost 2-decade-old game, I'd certainly prefer the UI not opt for the sterilised finish. After all, nothing has to pretend to be new to be good. Another thing this remaster has going for it is improvements to its sound design. And by improvements I don't mean superior to the Oblivion sound design, I mean just a bit more modern. The sounds just have a richness to them they didn't have back in 2006, where for instance the environment permits it, audio is more echoey.
I had a commission from the Emperor to compose a symphony.
And say, for example, in the arena, the crowd noises are just a lot more dense. It's frankly odd when you realise how many people actually are in here. How is this business model sustainable? Furthermore, how do they make this much noise? But the point is, effort has clearly gone into enriching these aspects of Oblivion. What you hear is just as valuable as what you see. It's a cohesive thing. Beyond that, the actual music, so far as I can tell, is unchanged. And thank God for that, because Oblivion's soundtrack is glorious. I'd go so far as to say that Oblivion isn't Oblivion without it. It could have everything else, be Oblivion in every single way, but without the music, it just doesn't feel right. It's those hallowed notes that can give you such an emotional connection to any game. So the correct option was, of course, to not interfere with that. to leave at least one element of this game's atmosphere untouched, to tap into an element of nostalgia while enhancing and enriching the experience in front of us. It's also an acknowledgement that being old doesn't automatically mean something doesn't qualify for meeting contemporary expectations, and very few things are as effortlessly timeless as music, especially when it comes to the Elder Scrolls games. When I'm out walking somewhere scenic, the road most travelled from Morrowind plays in my brain non-stop. And when I'm interacting with people who have a loose relationship with intelligence, Harvest Dawn from Oblivion is ringing in my memory. Music is incredibly powerful. Now let's talk some gameplay enhancements. The biggest one that I think is going to be the most noticeable are the differences in the combat system. It's no longer just a hack and slash where you and your enemy are wailing on each other, with limited impact feedback if any, so it wasn't particularly engaging as a system. In this, it's not necessarily the most engaging combat system ever, but at least your hits do produce feedback. You feel like you've made an impact, and that's a nice way to vastly improve the combat system through arguably minimal effort. I do think there are certain aspects of Skyrim that could have been introduced here to make it a little bit more deep. For instance, the idea a shield can be used to bash as well as block, and dual wielding, which aren't present here just like they weren't in the original Oblivion, but I can appreciate that would be quite tricky to implement. Another thing I've noticed that I'm quite fond of is you appear to do a combo of attacks rather than just aimlessly swinging, and you likely have to pay more attention to your stamina bar. But the overall combat system still retains that stiff but simple approach that Oblivion had. Outside of combat, you can sprint now, that's pretty cool. You can use it to run away from combat if you so wish to, but of course, it depletes stamina, so you'll probably have to run pretty far, as I noticed that enemies stay within just the right range to not give up most of the time. Nonetheless, if you really need to zip about, it's a cool feature to have. As for other improvements, over-encumbrance will allow you to move, just walk like in Skyrim as opposed to stay still until you drop stuff. You now always have a 100% chance to harvest plants, as that was honestly a silly limitation. The third-person camera doesn't look utterly dreadful. In fact, I know it's sacrilegious, but I've been using it a fair bit. You can disable the dialogue zoom, but I don't think that actually makes it better, as the camera has absolutely no regard for the rule of thirds when you do this. You can tell containers and corpses are empty before you check them. There's an auto-aim setting for archery, which may certainly have its uses for plenty of people, not that I think this game in particular needs it. For better or worse, the lockpicking system is exactly the same. So good luck getting used to that, though you certainly can. This proficiency persists to evade me, but thank God console commands are available without any back-end foolery. Oh, and of course, you can have a beard now. And NPCs will be observed to sport them as well. This is good, it's my belief that everybody should be entitled to a beard. Especially women. Leveling is also handled a bit differently. You still have to sleep in a bed to level up, but when you do, you are given 12 virtues that you can invest in a total of 3 different categories, up to 5 points a pop. I don't know if it's me, but I've also noticed that leveling up in this game doesn't take anywhere near as long as it did in Oblivion originally. But you get the point. There are lots of positive improvements, big and small, in Oblivion Remastered. As for cons, there's certainly a few of those too. I've already expressed that I'm not fond of the simplistic typography of the title card as seen on the cover and in the introduction, but that's like the final boss of all nitpicks, isn't it? It's clean, there's nothing objectively wrong with it, just give me that crusty Oblivion logo any day, I beg. And the only other thing is, in a bid to be convenient, sometimes the UI can fall into the trap of being too convenient. Specifically, as you roam about, the compass will tell you the name of locations ahead of you and your distance from them. It's handy, and I get why it looks like a good idea, but it takes a little bit from that exploration element if you ask me. Then of course there's the fact that if you look at your horse while on your horse, the game seems to be on a bound to remind you that it is in fact a horse. I know it's a horse, there's no interaction here, why is this taking up screen space? Beyond that, the fact the game file size is 119 gigabytes baffles me. How have you inflated Oblivion to be that big? You have made Oblivion bloatware. For reference, the original Oblivion, specifically the Game of the Year edition, was 4.6 gigabytes. I expected the remaster's file size to be ridiculously bigger, but 25 times bigger? What's next, an Oblivion zip bomb? 17 yottabytes of repeated PNGs of the remastered adoring fan, guaranteed to grenade any PC in seconds. And that's before Bethesda decides to include an added petabyte of this bad boy on his return tour. Jokes aside, big file sizes are just a factor of the modern gaming landscape. I sure do dread when every brand new release is 1 terabyte a pop, and will be yearning for the days where games were just 100 gigabytes. Away from that, the only other thing I can think to mention is this is still a Bethesda game underneath the Virtuous Remaster, so expect some classic Gamebryo tomfoolery, but I've got to say, it's not as buggy as the original Oblivion was. Sure, in my 12 hours or so losing my life into Oblivion Remastered, I've had one quest stage refuse to continue despite parameters being met, which was kinda weird, but pushing ahead to the next objective on muscle memory seemed to set that right. But beyond that, aside from little blips here and there, it's been a reasonably smooth cruise. But if there is a really game-shattering bug in here, I'll find it and report back to you. I don't have a particular skill in this, I just have really bad luck. So to conclude, I'm quite partial to the Oblivion Remaster. I've been enjoying it, and by that I mean I've lost a day of my life, and I'm sure to lose many more re-experiencing this troubled but wonderful game. Of course, remasters aren't perfect substitutes for the original material, especially when it comes to things like art style, and I suppose where you land on that argument depends on how you view art, especially video games as a form of it. But if you've never played Oblivion before, then I definitely recommend giving this a go. And if you have played Oblivion and you're deliberating playing this, then yeah, I can't see how it would necessarily ruin your perception of Oblivion. After all, the original version still exists. But you know what, Virtuous have done all right here. This doesn't feel like a soulless regurgitation of the Elder Scrolls 4. Mind has been paid to what made Oblivion so fantastic, and efforts have been made to retain it while the game has been modernised. And you know what, that game's too old barrier truly is a thing, for all of us. There's a point where there are older games that we may not play because they're just outdated beyond belief. There are plenty who do refuse to go back and play older games because they're before their time and they don't know if they'll get used to how games were then versus now, because a lot has changed. And it's great when remasters like this exist to bridge that gap, to rejuvenate elder titles so more people can enjoy the core experience. And if you're one of those people that's enjoyed Skyrim but never played Oblivion, all I can say is give it a whirl. And if you have Game Pass on either Xbox or PC, you won't even have to directly pay for it. I don't know what there is to dislike about that. I don't know what the business logic is either. But I suspect on some level this isn't even being treated as a release, but rather a PR campaign. Bethesda have fallen from grace a bit, if not a lot, and they want to restore some faith. Re-releasing Skyrim on the toaster is not going to do it. But maybe, just maybe, a well-placed, shadow-dropped remaster of Oblivion that many players won't even have to directly pay for, thanks to their acquisition by Microsoft, could certainly go some way to rebuilding bridges after the mediocrity of Starfield, the absolute tomfoolery of Fallout 76, and the loss of touch sort of with Fallout 4. Perhaps there's an aura of pro-consumerism in that, or perhaps they're just attempting to set the clock further back for the Elder Scrolls 6. But I still can't bring myself to forgive them for announcing that almost 7 years ago, when it's very evidently not even close to being ready. But no matter, this shadow-dropped Oblivion Remastered is pretty damn brilliant. It may not kiss perfection, but what does? Will it keep me from playing Skyblivion? No. I'm excited for that too. And will this affect that? I don't think so. That's not only entirely fan-made, but entirely fan-motivated. And Bethesda seem happy with them. After all, they gave everyone working on that project a free copy of Oblivion Remastered. Will Skyblivion blow the Oblivion Remaster out the water? Who knows? But it's very hard to compete with people passionate for something with nothing to gain, aside from maybe a cool reputation. So I do look forward to seeing what Skyblivion has in store for us as well. Nevertheless, I'm going to leave it there. I feel a calling to return to playing this game. Maybe find some things to do videos on, like that Skyrim playlist I've got. Well, it's an Elder Scrolls playlist really. I've just been waiting for the right opportunity to add to it from the other games. Maybe this remaster is it. I like the mysterious side of things, so be sure to leave some suggestions for what I could cover down in the comments section. Furthermore, I truly apologise for not uploading as much as I usually do and think I should. I can't necessarily explain what's going on with me, but it's like everything takes longer to do. It's nice to see that I still have those skills to quickly turn around videos, but I'd rather not push myself in low points, because when it comes a time where there's something to actually talk about, I have the energy to bother. As has proven to be the case here. I hope to make more videos on Oblivion Remastered, but look, I thank you all for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends, all that wonderful stuff if you fancy it. But with any luck, I'll be smelling you all very soon with another video at some point. But until next time, please take care and goodbye.